So they have to tell you according to the law of the universe.
Yes, Hoity.
Well, how do they tell us?
Through movies.
I rise, you fall.
Through symbols. Through the esoteric knowledge. Do you know what esoteric means, Hoity?
No, I don't.
It means the hidden. That's why we have to go seek truth. It's hidden.
So what do you do once you understand the knowledge?
To first understand the knowledge, you must submit yourself onto it, Hoity. Get up under it, consume it, become it. That how you conquer it. That how you crack the code of this false reality. That's exactly what the Greeks did during the fall of Kemet.
Tonight wasn't about planets. Tonight was about what happened after Kemet fell. How the story of the world got rewritten.
Merkaba. We talked about Tyre, about Alexander, about the Greeks coming in. But what happened after that? Like, from the fall of Kemet all the way to Christianity, the Renaissance, this world I'm in now.
Hoity, everything you see today, your churches, your temples, your holy books, it all sits on one broken bridge. From the fall of Kemet to the rise of the European powers. When Kemet was conquered, our time in the sun ended. And when their time began, so did a new kind of magic. Not alchemy, not metallurgy, but paper alchemy, history alchemy. They didn't just conquer lands, they conquered the timeline. Your children shall wander in the wilderness 40 years, 40 years, 1 year for each day. They tell you a story of slaves in Egypt, a story of a man named Moses, raised in Pharaoh's house, sent back as a savior, a story where God hardens a king's heart, drops plagues on a kingdom, then frees the people with miracles and terror. But if you really look at it, the story starts to glitch. In the book of Exodus, they say the Hebrews were led out of Egypt overnight, but in Numbers and Deuteronomy, they admit something strange. They didn't just leave. They wandered in the desert for 40 years. 40 years, not 40 days, not a long weekend, a full generation. So you have to stop and ask, if the mission was freedom, why keep them walking in circles for a lifetime? Why does a rescue mission feel more like a quarantine? Now imagine this. You're not looking at history through a church window anymore. You're looking at it through Kemet, through the eyes of black Egyptians, eyes that watched their own stories get stolen, flipped, and sold back under a new name. In this lens, the Exodus story stops looking like pure history and starts looking like propaganda. What if the slaves in the story really stand in for the common people of Kemet? The desert isn't just sand and heat, but years of mental reprogramming. The 40 years aren't about distance, but about killing off one belief system and raising another. A generation dies. A new generation is born under new gods. Zeus, Amon, Ak, a Jesus, reprogramming the mind of the people of Kemet to worship the Greeks as gods. The Bible makes it sound like this is all original, first time, holy download, straight from heaven. But when you study the ancient world, you see the pattern. Stories of divine lawgivers coming out of the wilderness, older than the Bible. Stories of people leaving a powerful kingdom led by a chosen messenger, older than the Bible. Stories of gods judged, replaced, fused, renamed, all over Kemet. What later became the Moses story smells like a remix. Pieces of African myth, pieces of real political transitions, wrapped in a new costume and stamped, "This is the Word of God." In this reading, the people weren't just wandering, they were being reprogrammed. Think about what the text itself says. In the desert, they don't just walk. They receive laws, learn new rituals, are told which gods to destroy, which altars to smash, which festivals to keep, which people to avoid. This isn't just survival training. This is indoctrination protocol. The old Egypt inside them had to die. The gods of their fathers, mothers, and ancestors, the Netjeru, the principles of Kemet, had to be painted as evil, pagan, cursed. So a new god could move in, a jealous one, a conquering one, a god that just happens to justify later empires, later crusades, later slavery.
This is crazy.
40 is not a random number. In ancient symbolism, 40 often means a cycle, a completion, a reset. 40 days of rain, 40 days of fasting, 40 years of wandering. Enough time for the original generation, the one who remembered Kemet, who remembered the old ways, to die out. And their children? Their children don't remember the Nile and its glory. They don't remember black pharaohs. They don't remember Mahat, the balance, the feather, the scales. All they remember is the desert, the fear, the voice of one God, and the laws they were told came from heaven. Listen carefully. When Kemet fell, you start seeing everything happen after that point. The wars of the Diadochi, the successor wars, Greeks fighting Greeks, dividing the land, real history, real blood, real battles. Now here's the trick. They took those real Greek wars and recast themselves in those same stories as someone else. In their holy book, those wars become the battles of the Jews. All those names in Genesis, Joshua, Judges, Kings, Amalekites, Perizzites, Hittites, Jebusites. But if you go into actual history, into the dust, the stone, the scrolls, you'll find evidence of war. You just won't find them, because it was really Greeks, talking about Greeks, then later wearing a mask, calling themselves Jews inside the story.
So they took their own wars, their own history, and just repackaged it? Put a new label on it?
Exactly. They had two histories. The real one, Greek conquests, Diadochi wars, trade, empire. The manufactured one, biblical stories, chosen people, holy wars they never actually fought. And when a scholar digs into the ground, they find real ruins and real wars. Then the book steps in and whispers, "That was us. That was our people. We were there." But the stones say, "No, that was Greece. That was Rome. You just changed the names."
The dragon's tail traces a glowing timeline across the cave wall. Kemet, Assyria, Persa, Greek, Roma, Tristanempri.
Now let's talk about something they don't want you to think about. Hellenization. The Greeks spread Hellenization like wildfire, conquering lands, forcing their gods, their language, their worldview. I showed you before, Serapis, Zeus, Ammon, the Greek gods planted in Kemet, statues standing in black land temples. They tried to make the Egyptians bow. They tried to overwrite Ma'at with Olympus. But when they marched down into the land you now call Israel, suddenly the story changes. Up north in Kemet, convert, submit, accept our gods. Down in Judea they claim, oh well, we let the Jews keep their religion. They could still practice, just not too spiritual. Think, little one. Why would an empire obsessed with one language, one culture, one pantheon, suddenly protect a little desert religion? It doesn't fit, unless they weren't protecting an old faith. They were building a new tool.
So you're saying Hellenization wasn't just about Zeus and Athena?
No, Hellenization was the lab where they created Judaism. The land was full of black Egyptians, Phoenicians, Africans, remnants of the Kemetic Empire still living across Phoenicia, Tyre, Israel, the Levant. The people we now call Phoenicians, that's a Greek word. They were Egyptian seafarers, merchants, traders, Kemet's outreach program across the Mediterranean. So when you hear Phoenicians in Spain, in Cyprus, in Greece, in North Africa, understand, that's Kemet's fingerprints everywhere. Now imagine you're Greece. You've conquered Kemet's land, but not Kemet's mind. These people still remember who they are. They still have culture, memory, gods, ancestors. You try Serapis. You try Zeus Ammon. They not going for it. So what do? You create a new belief system, a halfway house, a bridge. Not Egyptian, not fully Greek, but under your control. You call it Judaism. You push it on the children. You let it marinate over generations. That's Hellenization.
On the cave wall, scenes flicker. Greek soldiers in armor, African villagers, A scroll unrolling with new laws, new names. Children reciting from a strange new text.
They even had to create Jews retroactively, invent a whole backstory to explain why these people in this land have this new religion. Why? Because there was no proof. You can't just pop out of nowhere and say, "We've been here all along. We fought all these wars. We had all this history." Not when Egyptian records talk about Greeks, show Greeks, hire Greeks in their armies, but never mention you. So they try to plug the holes. We were captives in Babylon. Assyrians took us. We were slaves in Egypt. But if Egyptians could defeat the Assyrians, and if the Assyrian Empire already included Babylon, Sumer, Akkad, why would they suddenly lose to Babylon alone? The timeline doesn't add up. They hide inside real wars, real chaos, and say, "Oh yeah, that's when we were taken. That's why you don't see us."
And all those names, Jehoiakim, kings of Judah, this king, that king, are you saying?
They sprinkle characters into historical moments like seasoning. Take Necho II of Kemet, real pharaoh, real history. Herodotus talks about him. They say, Necho II appointed Jehoiakim, king of Judah, to rule under him. But if that's true, where are the records in Kemet? Where are the reliefs showing these Hebrews side by side with Greeks and Egyptians? We have Greeks carved in stone. Where's this Jehoiakim? The answer? He lives only in the book, not in the ground. They needed him in the story to explain why Jews were in power under an Egyptian pharaoh. But the earth doesn't recognize him.
The wall shifts again. Persians sweeping in, Egyptians resisting, then Greeks rising behind them like a second wave.
Then come the Persians. From the 6th century BCE, there's a long struggle. Persians pushing in, Egyptians pushing back, rebellions and counterattack. For 75 to 100 years, Kemet resists, loses, regains, loses again. Through all that, no real mention of these Jews in the historical record. They're not frontline players, they're not in the major inscriptions, they're not in the Egyptian chronicles. But later, the story goes, the Persians freed us from Babylon, then we went back to our land, then somehow we helped take Kemet. If they were powerful enough to overthrow Egypt with the Persians, why couldn't they beat the Greeks later? Because they weren't there the way the story claims. The Persian invasion itself, that too, was part of a long game. The Greeks learn your defenses by helping. Then they come later, Alexander, the Diadochi, and finish the job.
And that's when Judea falls under the Seleucids, Antiochus IV, and the story of the Maccabees, right? Hanukkah?
Ah, Hanukkah, the miracle of the oil, and the miracle of propaganda. The story goes, Hellenization is raging. A Greek king, Antiochus IV, is supposedly persecuting Jews. The Greeks take over the temple, put idols inside. A tiny group of Jewish rebels, the Maccabees, defeat 20,000 to 40,000 Greek soldiers inside that land. Sounds powerful, right? Like the old Bible battles. Outnumbered, but God was with us. Problem is, there's no solid proof outside their own texts that this miracle war ever happened that way. No neutral chronicler saying, a small desert group just swept an elite Greek force. And these same Greeks, mind you, pride themselves on warfare, Sparta, athletics, Olympics, iron discipline. Yet we're told a handful of rebels outlast them, then get wiped out next chapter when Demetrius I shows up. The first miracle needed a sequel, so the sequel kills the miracle. And then that little note, they reasserted the Jewish religion, partly by forced conversion. Forced conversion of who? The people there were Africans, black descendants of the Kemetic Empire. So when you see Jews forcing Jews to be Jews, ask yourself, are those Jews or newly rebranded Africans being pushed into a religion created in a Greek laboratory? That's Hellenization too, just wearing a different mask.
Scenes flicker. A small band of rebels with swords. a temple littered with idols, a lamp burning longer than it should. Then the image glitches, fades, like a corrupted file.
So why would Rome and Greece, after all of that conquest, all their own gods, their own stories, suddenly convert to Judaism's child, Christianity?
Because, little star, you don't mind bowing to a throne you built yourself. The only thing that makes sense is they created it. They crafted Judaism as a tool during Hellenization, then later Christianity as its expansion pack. Same people, same bloodlines, same empire structure, now in priestly robes. That's why you find the oldest synagogue in Delos, Greece, Greek people converting, Roman elites embracing Christian doctrine. The persecutor becomes the follower, unless the persecutor was also the author.
On the cave wall, ink-like shadows swirl into the shape of a man with two faces. One crowned with laurel like a Greek, the other hooded like a priest.
Now enter Josephus. They call him a Judeo-Roman scholar. His story? Supposed to be a Jewish commander. Surrounded. His people choose mass suicide over capture. Somehow he survives, conveniently surrenders, then ends up under Roman protection, writing history in Greek for his new masters. He gives you Antiquities of the Jews, the Wars of the Jews, and inside that, the shiny Testimonium Flavianum, the golden paragraph used to say, see, even a non-Christian source proves Jesus existed. But look closer. No other writer of his time confirms Christians as a strong group then. He never mentions Christians anywhere else in his long works. And the first person to quote that golden paragraph is Eusebius. The same Eusebius who pushes the letters of Aristeas, the story that 72 elders translated Hebrew law into Greek, creating the Septuagint, just happens to have copies of a letter from 160 BCE no one else mentions, is known even by some of his own people as creative with the truth. Whoever smelt it, dealt it. One man holds the keys. Proof of Jesus via Josephus. Proof of the Septuagint via Aristeas. Earliest mention of the Library of Alexandria in that same suspect text. If the letters are bogus, then the library story might also be a cover. They say, we put all the ancient Kemetic wisdom in Alexandria. Then it burned down. Sorry, history lost. Convenient again. You really think an empire that careful about power would let all that knowledge be destroyed by accident? Or do you think they took what they needed, locked it away? In vaults, in Vatican basements, in archives unseen, and left the myth of a burned library as smoke over the crime scene?
So Constantine, Nicaea, the councils, that was just the next phase?
Exactly. By the time Constantine steps onto the stage, the ground has already been prepared. Kemetic wisdom looted. African memory suppressed. Hellenization spread. Judaism crafted and forced. Greek texts written, edited, translated. Rome inherits Greece's cultural throne. Then comes Christianity, the fusion of imperial power, Jewish law, Greek philosophy, and Roman ambition. At Nicaea, they weren't discovering truth. They were standardizing control.
The cave fills with ghostly crowds. Emperors, bishops, scribes, soldiers, merchants. All their voices echo into one tangled chant.
Engineered from the moment your ancestors lost political power, but still carried spiritual power. They couldn't erase Kemet from the stone, so they tried to erase Kemet from the mind. They made new gods out of old myths, new languages out of old scripts, new chosen people out of old conquerors. But here's the part they can't touch, little one. Truth lives in patterns, in contradictions, in the places where the story doesn't match the stone. That's why what I'm giving you isn't just facts, it's sight. So when somebody waves a holy book in your face, you can say, show me the ruins, show me the stele, show me the artifacts, show me the timeline. If it doesn't line up, then you know what you're looking at isn't history. It's liturgy. It's programming.
Hooty's hand shakes as he writes. The cave wall now shows an hourglass. At the top, Kemet. In the narrow centre, Persia, Greece, Rome, twisting like a snake through time. At the bottom, churches, mosques, synagogues, skyscrapers, satellites. All of it flowing from one choke point, the fall of a black empire and the rise of a rewritten reality.
Merkaba. This is a lot. Like, this changes everything. The way I see religion, the way I see history, the way I see us. What am I supposed to do with this?
First, hold it. Don't rush to argue. Sit with it. Let the patterns simmer. Second, remember, this cave isn't just a story, it's your mirror. Your people were not inserted into their book. They were removed from there. Just like my kind, the dragon, but not really well get into that down the line. Because us dragons and your people has a deep spiritual connection on. Third, don't let anybody shame you out of questions. If a story is true, it can handle being examined. If it collapses every time you touch it, it was never divine. It was just well marketed.
The dragon lowers his massive head until his glowing eyes are level with Hooty's.
This is only volume 2, little star. We've only traced the thread from Kemet's fall through Greek deceit into Roman religion. There's more. How this script crossed into Europe, how it fueled slavery, how it justified the genocide of African people while calling it prophecy. But for tonight, breathe.
So the ancient world isn't just ruins and museums. It's the crime scene.
Exactly. And you? You're not just a boy in a cave. You're a witness.
Merkaba, how did you connect all the dots like that?
I'm a dragon. I've been here for ancients, before the dawn of man.
The lights on the cave wall dim. Only 2 glows remain, Hooty's eyes and the slow, ancient fire in Merkaba's chest.
It's time for me and the tribe to bury these lies.